Welcome back to Echo Ridge and the start of another glorious series. This one is gonna knock your socks off because we're gonna be printing a new dupe every 3 cycles. Now, last time I tried a series like this, I made it to about 130 duplicants before my old computer started to light on fire. But since I've built my current rig, I figured it's time to flex its muscles and see how many duplicants we can get it to support. Additionally, Clay has made plenty of updates to the game in terms of how efficient the simulation is, so that should help as well. Now, when I was doing a little bit of research for this playthrough, I went into debug mode and checked out a few different starts. The reason why I did that is because I no longer think my computer will be the limiting factor, but rather the amount of oxygen we can produce. The food is not going to be too much of an issue. There are plenty of ways to make more food. Oxygen, there's not as many. I initially took a look at the Oceania cluster, well, because it starts with a lot of water in and around the map. But I averaged about 12 kilos per second between the starting asteroid and its nearby asteroid. Whereas when I looked at the Terra cluster start, I was averaging about 16 kilos per second. And I know what you might be thinking, well, Echo, you're gonna be able to go to all sorts of other asteroids and get the water from there as well. Which is a great point, except for the fact you have to remember how quickly the dupes are going to be coming in. We will have over 120 dupes by cycle 350, so it is important to have plenty of renewable water until we can get to the point where we can venture out further on the star map. Now, the Terra asteroid has no traits. Doesn't matter how many times you click the reroll button, you can't get any specialized traits on the Terra asteroid. But we do have some options on what kind of traits we want on our connected asteroid, the radioactive swamp. And what I'll be looking for is something that is the least intrusive to the planetoid itself, and that way there's a better chance that it would spawn more water-producing vents or geysers. So boulders are 100% out. In the end, I selected one with crashed satellites and metal-rich. Additionally, on the Tundra asteroid, there's a subsurface ocean, so that could come in handy. So without further ado, let's get started, hoping that this seed gives us plenty of geysers that produce water. For our starting dupes, I've selected a digger, a rancher, and a researcher. Not that this matters too killin' much, because we're gonna have so many dupes to choose from anyways, but it'll be great to get some of that early research done as fast as possible, because we're gonna need it. Additionally, being able to ranch critters right out the gate would be great. Granted, we're going to have to wait 2 skill points because I didn't feel like re-rolling it until we got a guaranteed starts with Critter Ranching 1, and then having a starting digger, well, that's just pretty much the standard at this point, isn't it? Now, you'll notice the names have already been filled in. For the names in the colony, I have just taken all of the Patreon members and the YouTube members and started a brand new list, and we'll be alternating back and forth by order of seniority. Now, we only have 95 total members, so once we get to that point, I'll add any new members from the Patreon and the YouTube, or we'll just keep default names. And I think instead of New Dupe City, it'd make more sense to say Max Dupe City? Or how about, even better, Duplicity? Alright, I'll be honest, I'm pretty proud of that one. Let me know in the comments if you've thought of one better. And away we go. Welcome to our new home. We are going to pause for a little bit just to take a lay of the land, and I'm not seeing anything too crazy. This is a relatively easy start, although it does look like we're going to have to dig down a little bit in order to get to our water. So let's get a little digging done, and once we get some materials, I can then start putting in some ladders. We'll just go straight down like this. Now, it goes without being said, there's going to be a lot of temporary buildings here. And that's for the simple reason that I have no idea what the future holds for this colony. I'm going to have to be very careful with how much water we're using, how much water we're wasting. There's our nice little hatchy boy. I guess we'll do some digging over here while they're bored. We're going to end up building bedrooms and then moving the bedrooms because, well, we're going to have a lot of bedrooms. The same thing with the bathrooms. We're going to have a lot of duplicants on every single shift, so we're going to need a lot of different potties. I think since all the dupes are over here, I'm going to end up digging this out to start off with. Oh, I didn't even get any copper from that? Ew. Here's some copper here, though, so we'll grab it, and that'll give us enough metal to build some doors. We also want to put some outhouses down. Now, I know normally when we start off, we're in a sort of hurry to see how fast we can get research up, and we are 100% in a rush because there's a lot of research that we're going to need, for instance, getting everything we need for spawns and cooling systems. But in this case, we're also being methodical. There's that copper, in go the doors. We will be using the stack door method to allow for maximum oxygen flow and carbon dioxide releasing, because we will not have a problem finding metal on this planetoid. Ooh, speaking of which, let's check out and see what the planetoid description has for us. Okay, we have 12 unknown geysers, a saltwater geyser, and a cool steam vent. Oy, I really hope of the 12 unknown geysers, there's at least one of each water type. We don't have to keep building all these ladders down. We just want to get a pitcher pump in, say right here. I'm noticing a couple of nice veins of algae. This will definitely help close the gap before we find enough water and finish all that spawn research. Not to mention, Terra is famous for having a lot of starting water as well. Now, there is a bunch of sand on this layer, so I am not going to dig out here, at least for now, looking at where we're going to put on our research. So I think we'll end up digging out this area and just putting in some nice tiles. Now, for the first day, we're actually not doing the whole downtime and sleep thing, but don't worry, they'll be fine. We just have a lot of work that we need to do, such as make some bedrooms. Now, for our barracks, which is all these duplicants are ever going to have, because we will definitely not have the space to do luxury bedrooms, I'm going to end up separating each room by cot type. This is the standard cot room. Now, granted, with only 8 cots per room, this will only get us up to Dupe 56, but it'll look nice. All right, the dupes seem to be getting bored. We got the last cot going in. So let me start on research. In fact, I'll put the research station right up here. That way we get the well-lit buff coming off the printing pod. And then I'll put the manual generator and battery and stuff down here. I like building my battery at least 2 spaces away. And that way when we do get the jumbo battery, we can slide it in right there. I will not connect these yet, otherwise the dupe will end up running on the wheel just to power the research station, and it won't be charging the battery. Alright, with the bedrooms and the bathrooms in though, I think we can put the duplicants back on a normal schedule. There's their downtime, and here's their bedroom. Just have to wait for it to flip. No, Joe, we do not need to disinfect the toilets. These are the only buildings that I disable disinfect on. I like leaving the germ counter on because if there are germs in and around the colony somewhere, I'll be able to tell because there'll be a duplicant disinfecting it. And if that's the case, that means we're doing something wrong. All right, and we are ready to start research. I think we're gonna go right into planter boxes, start putting down some mealwood. We do have 20,000 galleries, but here in another cycle, we're about to have 4 dupes. And then 3 cycles after that, we're gonna have 5 dupes. So staying ahead of the food curve is very, very important. And if you're not doing anything, you are digging. Congratulations. The priority game when you're running one of these max dupe colonies is always a pain in the tuchus. I'm going to keep most of the priorities flat for now until we probably get to 10 or 20 dupes and the colony's a little larger, and it'll make sense to prioritize which each individual dupe is doing. But for now, I kind of need everybody doing everything. And I think I will try to combine all of these water tanks maybe into a larger tank, say about here. Although there is polluted oxygen down there. Not excited about it. Oh, I should probably get an oxygen diffuser in as well. I'll hook that right up. And while the duplicants are bored, I'll have them loading up algae inside this storage bin. And already we've finished our first piece of research, which I think next up will be the jumbo battery on our storage bin. As I was saying, we will put algae, but I'll put it as a priority of 4. So it might be a little while before they end up filling that whole thing up, because we have a lot that we want to do. Notice that we are halfway through cycle 2 and the duplicants still have not slept yet. They're down to 6% stamina, so they will end up passing out here in a minute, and there they go. Despite the fact that they're not yet at their bedtime, because they were sleepy, they're taking what's called an unscheduled nap. It happens to all of us. I decided before I end up combining all these tanks, I want to see where the rest of the water is. And that way I can plan the water drop with all of the large bodies of water at once. We'll see how that goes. No doubt I'll end up making a giant mess, but that's okay. Next research has been completed. Choices, choices. I think we'll go back up to meal prep, grab the mess tables. Having some early morale boost might be helpful. And since I'm in here, I will end up fixing the floor here, and that way we can put the first mess hall in this area here. In fact, I'm probably going to start doing all sorts of digging in and around here. We're going to need this space, and while we have extra duplicant labor, it'll be smart to get ahead of the game. Plus, we do need to start putting down some mealwood, and this looks like a good spot for it. Remember, normal difficulty, standard eating dupes are going to end up needing 5 mealwoods for the simple reason that over a course of 3 cycles, they produce 600 calories of meal rice for a rate of 200 calories per cycle. Well, with each dupe eating 1,000 calories per cycle, we know we need 5 plants to support 1 duplicant. Wow, we're getting through this research really quick. I think we'll head towards advanced research. This will also give us access to the water cooler. And here it is around cycle 3.5, and our printing pod has lit up. Notice that the game is paused, and that's because I am running the pause on ready to print mod, and that way I don't miss a single pod and it's not delayed, so that I am true to my word in printing a dupe every 3 cycles. Now the disadvantage here is there could be some very bad dupes, and we don't want very bad dupes, especially things like mouth breathers and bottomless stomach dupes. In this case, these dupes aren't too bad. In fact, I like this Herald here. They can do tidying, farming, and operating. They're a grease monkey, germ resistant, and their only negative is that they're a pacifist. That's not a big deal. So welcome to the colony, dupe number 4, Noose 78. Now there will be times during the course of this series where I'm going to end up printing multiple dupes back to back, or that's at least how it's going to look like to you, because, well, there was nothing really to record in the 3 cycles in between each pod. So if there's a certain way you'd like for me to display the dupes, let me know in the comments below. Now, Noosh gets the special honor of being the first duplicant on a separate schedule. In fact, since Brian is an early bird, I also want to make sure that they are working for the entire morning, so we're going to move Brian down here. And now all I need to do is think of names for the shift. So until I get some better recommendations from the comments, we're going to go with the numerical method. And that'll give us 8 solid shifts, all separated by sleep schedules. Now, if you really wanted to create more shifts, you could just have the sleep schedules sort of off by 1 instead of 3, something like this. But to be honest, it doesn't really matter. We're going to have enough bathrooms and plenty of dupes, so having them separated in these sort of shift structures will work. I can tell you that in the future, we'll probably also separate them based on colony. Now, as far as Noosh's skill point, I think we're going to go farming first because we're going to have a lot more farming. We'll probably also end up throwing them into mechatronics engineering, but I'm hoping that we'll end up getting a dupe that'll either start with mechatronics engineering or will be a little bit better suited. So for now, Noosh is going to be the first proud owner of a hat. Next up on the research tree, we are going to go down here to make sure we have some flower pots so we can decorate our mess hall. And that will turn it into a great hall. I think we'll start the digging here. I'm already getting nervous about vents or geysers. We're starting to see the edges of the other biomes, and I don't see a single vent or geyser yet. It would be just like me to end up rolling a critical fail. For our great hall, we're starting with a smattering of mess tables, all built out of copper ore, of course, because that's all we really have access to. We also need our flower pot and our water cooler. I have unlocked a couple of the pretty water coolers. I think we'll go with the weepy blue this time. And just like that, we have a great hall, which is going to be giving us that beautiful +6 morale. Plus, we have our latrine giving us another +1. And then right over here, we have our barracks giving us yet another +1. I'm doing a little bit of adventuring off over in this point here, just to see what else we can see so I can start doing some of the planning. I know this is looking like our main transport shaft, but it really is not. It's not wide enough, first of all. I like to make them a little bit wider, but I'd also like to be able to see if there's any point of interest or anything in the way before we decide where that main transport corridor is going to be. In fact, we'll probably end up having 2. Oh, look at that glorious thimbleweed. Granted, there's a lot of polluted oxygen, so I think next up on the research, we will head towards the deodorizers. So when I can dig through here, which it's going to be a little while, I'll be able to put down the deodorizers and start auto-harvesting these thimbleweeds here. That'll give us a nice supply of reed fiber right from the rip. Now, since we are making meal lice, I do want to find a cook as soon as possible, but also because we're having food that will be able to go off, I'd like to build our carbon dioxide sink. And there's no bad reason why not just to put it inside the mess hall. It will take up some space, but that's not a big deal anyways. And we just put 2 of them in there like that, put some ladders over them, and now all the food we brought into there. This, of course, is once again, say it with me now, temporary. And I'll also start adding on some more cots because we only have 1.4 cycles till our next dupe comes. Oh, free mealwood. Absolutely. Speaking of the mealwood, you'll see that I am tracking dirt and algae. We will end up burning through a lot of dirt with this mealwood. So as soon as we can, we'll have Noosh get into critter ranching so we can start ranching some hatches. And since we now have a spot for all of our food, I can deconstruct this one, and then I'll put the research station here and the supercomputer right here. And I completely forgot that we've already got the jumbo battery. That was a little sloppy. Can we not make a bunch of sloppy errors in this run? That'd be great. Here goes our supercomputer, just like that. Perfect. We could definitely end up putting the research buildings inside of a laboratory, which would help make them even more efficient. In fact, why don't I do that instead? This looks like a nice little area right here, and it'll keep everything on the same line. We'll just bulldoze through it. I'll even put some dirt storage up here. Granted, we are going to end up paying for the light cost, but it's only 10 watts, and we'll use the nice Rubik's Cube one. More millwood going in. This will give us enough for 5 duplicants, although I don't think we have enough seeds yet. In fact, we only have 8 seeds. I do not want to use blossoms, even though they are a better food, at least for right now, because, well, they drink up water. And that is definitely going to be a critical resource in this playthrough. Now, when loading dirt up into this storage bin, it doesn't make sense to have 20 tons, but we will put in, say, 2 tons and set it to priority of 4. And our original 3 dupes are ready for their skill points. Belt-fed Joe is going to be going into farming because eventually they're going to be getting into ranching. Brian is going in advanced research so that we can use the supercomputer. And then Naz is going to get their hard digging, which is good because I need to be able to cut through some of this granite because I think this is eventually we're going to drop all that water down through here. Oh, some oxalite too. If I can find a source of sulfur, we'll also be running divergent critters on this colony because they'll help us produce some mud, and the mud we can turn into more dirt and water. Cycle 6, duplicate number 5. Unfortunately, we did not get a cook, but this Catalina is able to do research. We'll eventually have some doctors and decorators, but these are both slow learners, which means they're going to scale up incredibly slow. Welcome to the colony, duplicate number 5, Mikey Sheep. I am going to end up moving these duplicants off of shift 1 because I am no doubt going to forget to end up moving these dupes. So it'll be nice that once they're printed, I'll have a few cycles that I can remember to move them from shift 1. Mikey Sheep is also going to be a researcher, and the bonus to science will also help them skill level up faster. But because all dupes on this colony start not being able to do research, we need to make sure that Mikey Sheep is allowed to. With our oxygen diffuser able to produce 500 grams per second of oxygen, it means we've reached the capacity for this one oxygen diffuser already. I mean, it is cycle 7, so we will put in another one. And I'm thinking it'll just go up here. It's not going to be used too much right now, but this is where we're expanding to, especially with our bedrooms. So I will end up putting a power wire all the way up there. Here we go. Next up on the research front, we have completed deodorizers. So it's time to start getting into air systems and everything that goes with that. Electrolyzers, water sieves, buffer tanks, etc., etc. It's going to be a little while until we build one, but sooner rather than later, I can finally put in a nice little deodorizer system so none of this polluted oxygen ends up coming out. We don't want the dupes to get the yucky lungs, so these deodorizers will be important. In fact, we'll go with 3 deodorizers. I think that's a perfect amount. And then over here on the bottom right, we are starting to build the shell of our tank. I'm trying to figure out where the bottom's going to be. It's got to be at least lower than this one here. So I think the bottom's going to end up being right here. So we'll end up building this out something like that. In fact, I'm not going to put walls in on this left side yet for the simple reason I don't want to deal with this polluted oxygen. And we have no power down here to put a deodorizer, so it can wait. But we will also need a ladder rung on the inside. And because we do have a real farmer in the colony, we managed to get enough seeds just from that little bit of digging and from our first or second harvest. Ooh, I need to move this hatch too. This hatch is going to end up eating all of that dirt. So let me sweep up this dirt. The amount of problems I'm having trying to figure out where I want this tank and what to do with this water is probably not a good sign for the future of this colony. Although I did just unlock liquid pumps. So instead of doing all this, why don't I just build the tank where I want it and then I can pump all the liquid into it. Granted, this is a temporary tank because, well, of course it is. I think right here will be just fine. It avoids most of the problem areas. There we go. The dupes are gonna love this. They'll get a little sopping wet, but it's only temporary. Pride is forever. Stress is probably gonna go up a little bit, and I am keeping an eye on the dupes. As more of this carbon dioxide drops, so will the oxygen, which will also help them. Not too much I can do about that. This is just the unfortunate part where when you're building that first tank, dupes are gonna get wet. They're not gonna be able to breathe. It's sort of a miserable time in the beginning of every colony. All in the name of progress. In our bathrooms, I'm also going to end up putting another deodorizer. And that way, the polluted oxygen being created by the polluted dirt in here will not have a chance to get out. Because our deodorizers can reach 3 tiles up, I like to put a little tile right here. And that way, this deodorizer can grab any polluted oxygen that tries to slip through. And there it is, the middle of cycle 9. It's time for another dupe. Still no cook. And the choice is pretty simple for me. This Bonnie is a flatulent dupe, which I will try to avoid for as long as possible. This Travaldo, well, they can't build anything. So it leaves up to this Lindsay. Yep, cycle 9, we have 3 researchers, which is not too big of a deal because, yes, we have 3 researchers, but there's only 2 research buildings. So one of them's going to be free to do other things. Welcome to the colony, duplicant number 6, Flower Girl 100. And while the game's still paused, I'm going to end up doing all the responsible things, like moving the dupe, skilling the dupe up, and setting dupe priorities, which I did change my mind and ended up setting the priorities after all. I thought it was going to be longer before I did it, but I really needed the dupes to be a little bit more efficient in what they were doing. For instance, making sure the farmer is the first one to get the errand to take care of this mealwood, and that way there's a higher chance that we'll get a seed for it. I've already queued up Flower Girl's mealwood, and they already have a mess table. With our water tank going in, oh, I suppose I'm going to have to drop this pitcher pump here in a minute. I'll also end up putting some pumps in and start cycling out all this water. Big news over on the east side where we were digging is we found the teleporter, transmitter, and receiver, which means we can also see the top of our next planetoid. And of course, it is the radioactive swamp. No big information here. Oh, I just noticed there was some slime in here. I'm going to move this slime over onto this side. I didn't even see that in the dig. But the deodorizers are already taking care of all that polluted water. But it also means we are going to be able to harvest all of these delightful reed fibers, which we will now start tracking. This is going to be about the point where we end this episode. Normally, I'm going to shoot for about 10 duplicants per episode and approximately 2 videos per week. This video, we had a little bit more planning and setup to do, so we weren't able to get as far. I'd like to hear what you're most looking forward to in this colony, and while you're down there in the comment section, why don't you go ahead and make a guess at how many duplicants we'll end up with. So until next time, much love, happy gaming, and I'll talk to you soon.